welcome to an updated draft video. And of course last week I did make a first draft video and I have made a few changes since then, and I want to say a few things before I get into my team and explain some of the changes I've made. So on the left hand side you can see the league code, so you can go into the description of this video and you can either click on the link that's going to be provided, or you can just input that code and you can join. And there's also going to be kind of like an FPL Cup within the league, so there's two things that you can win. So be sure to join the league, and hopefully all of you finish with a very good rank. That would be very good. And the other thing I want to say is that I want all of you in the comment section of this video and also in my community posts to send in your teams. But what I would like to do, if possible, is if you go on Twitter or Instagram and you send me an image, a cropped image of your teams, and I'm going to be using those images and I'm going to be discussing your teams and just providing my thoughts. I'm not really one to give ratings, but you can let me know in the comment section if you'd like that. But the main thing is just to kind of talk about what's good, what's bad. Jesus, that voice crack. Bad, and also what could be improved in general, and also just maybe some ideas that we can bounce off. But yeah, that's what I'd like to do. So I'm going to be making a draft video for you lot, rating your drafts. So send in your teams on Twitter and Instagram, try crop it just like you can see on screen, like I've done with my team, something similar to that, and then I'll be able to comment on them, and I'll be discussing them in detail. So yeah, be sure to do that and also join the league. But enough of all that, let's go into what is different in my team and why. So in goal I still have Robert Sanchez, although I'm going to say this, there's quite a few things that are putting me off. So for example, there's the injury to Lamptey, who, to be fair, it doesn't really affect Brighton defensively in my opinion, but apparently Lewis Dunk is also a doubt at the moment. So obviously all of these sorts of things are going to maybe cause some imbalances in Brighton's defence. And there's also the fact of Ben White. I think his move to Arsenal is going to be confirmed on Wednesday, so that's something else that we need to take into account. And I already discussed this in detail in my first draft video, where I was talking about the fact that Ben White is one of their best defenders, and just him leaving, it could have an impact on Brighton and their defensive numbers, both the underlying stats and also the clean sheets they managed to keep in the end. So Sanchez is still in, but I'm just even less confident than I was before, and I already discussed kind of my reservations about him, where I think he's a good keeper, he's a good 4.5 million option, but I'm not so sure he's going to reach the levels of Martinez or Pope in the years gone by. As for my defence, Trent Alexander-Arnold stays, and I'm not really going to change that. And of course he's going to be such a popular pick. You could maybe go for Robertson to be different in that regard, but what I would suggest is don't be different for the sake of it. If you look at all the underlying numbers, Trent was pretty much top in terms of chance creation, in terms of the whole season. Of course, in terms of chances created per 90 minutes, I think Luke Shaw slightly beat him with 2.4 chances created per 90 minutes compared to Trent's 2.3. But in the end, it's not always just about underlying stats. You also see the fixtures, the long-term fixtures for Liverpool, and they're very, very good. And I do think that Trent, at his price at 7.5, will outscore most 7.5 million defenders. Well, he's the only one, but you know what I mean. Any pretty much defender, all the 7.5 million midfielders and strikers for the most part. So Trent is well worth it. And as for Lucas Digne, I'll be honest, of course there's going to be a lot of hype around Everton, especially Digne at his price, and I do think he's a good option on paper, but maybe he's going to troll us yet again. So it's a wait and see with Lucas Digne, but we'll wait and see what happens there. But he is still in my draft. I do think that he's going to keep more clean sheets, and actually the other day he featured in a friendly for Everton, so he's back. He's obviously recovering from that injury he sustained at the Euros, but he should be fine for game week 1, and he is a good option. He's going to be very popular as well, and a lot of people are going to be having Sanchez, Trent and Digne. So I do think it's important to get a few players in that are going to be good options, but also maybe got less ownership, that are maybe breaking away from the template. That would be ideal. So that's what I would recommend. Now, I've got Target in there, and I wasn't really considering doubling up on Aston Villa players in general, or even having one of them, but the first 3 fixtures are so good, and I do think that Target, Martinez, these sorts of defensive assets for Aston Villa, I think they're worth it. So if you are maybe thinking of having one of them because doubling up on their defense is probably not ideal given the fixtures from game week 4 onwards. I would probably say Target is the one you'd want to go for over Martinez even. But yeah, at 5 million, he's got a bit of assist for it. He got 4 assists last season. The only kind of bad thing I think in terms of Target is the amount of yellow cards he tends to pick up. But other than that, I think the first 3 fixtures he can do really well. And at his price, you can move him on to Sufal, for example, or maybe to Eiling when Leeds' fixtures pick up around game week 5. There's quite a few options you can go to. Tierney as well from Arsenal after their difficult fixtures against Chelsea and Manchester City in game week 2 and 3. So I think Targ is actually a good option for the first 3, and maybe you can have Watkins or Buendia. But because of that fixture swing, that very big fixture swing in 4, I do think that tripling up is maybe overkill, but having 1 or 2 is probably the ideal thing. Otherwise, maybe if you're thinking of doing a wildcard very early on from around game week 4 to 7, then maybe you can afford to triple up and be a bit more bold with Aston Villa. But I do think for the first 3 fixtures, Target is one of the best options and he can keep a lot of clean sheets. And then we'll move on to the rest of my starting 11 before discussing my bench. But I'm also going to be discussing some alternatives to some of the players I have that I've got in mind and that I might change to. But of course, there's always so many options being thrown around and there might be someone that we're not thinking of. But Buendia's in, and the other day he actually got a handful of assists for Watkins. Both of them combined very well in the friendly. So Buendia is obviously going to be another popular choice over 10% ownership. And at 6.5 million, I think him and I'd say Rafinha are the standouts. Then there's if you're going down a bit in price, Harrison and these sorts of players, Smith Rowe. But at 6.5 million and below, I do think Buendia and Rafinha are the standouts. If it's, not thinking of fixtures and just thinking about who's the best assets, then I think Rafinha is better than Buendia, is a bit more proven, a bit more consistent in the Premier League anyway. But I do think for the first 3 fixtures, Buendia could be really good. And it's good cover. If you don't have Watkins up front, I think Buendia covers that pretty nicely. It's looking like Grealish is moving to Manchester City. At least reports are saying he's nearing a move. So that it's a double-edged sword because it means Buendia becomes the main creator, the main man in midfield and on the wings. But at the same time, I don't think Aston Villa are as strong without Grealish. So we'll wait and see how Buendia and Watkins are affected, and even the rest of Aston Villa. But Buendia should be the main creator, the main man for Aston Villa if Grealish were to leave. And I think he's a good option for the first 3. The ownership isn't too high, despite the fact that quite a few managers do have him. And now, this is a bit of an interesting one. I've got Heung-min Son in there, but of course, he faces Manchester City first off. But what I do like about him is that he's 10 million and he's got a great record against Manchester City. He's got some good opening fixtures. And even his record without Kane over the years is exceptional. He's actually one of the best goal per 90-minute ratios of any player in the last few seasons. But even with Kane, we saw what he did last season. They combined so well. So either way, I think Son will be a great asset. And I do think that Nuno will actually put a lot of emphasis on Son when they're attacking. So Heung-min Son, I think, is a good option. The only kind of downside, in my opinion, is facing Manchester City first game week. But I just like what I can do with the extra 2 million going from Bruno to Son. But another thing I could do, and this is maybe entering the kind of risky territory, is move Son to someone like Nicola Pepe, who's got an exceptional Game Week 1 fixture, and then move him on to Son. I would have the extra funds in the bank, obviously, if I were to just move Son to Pepe and then move on into Game Week 2. But it's risky. Price changes can happen. They tend to fluctuate a lot in the early few game weeks. And also, just moving around these kind of premium and mid-price midfielders, it is very risky. So maybe I should just keep it safe, go with Bruno. But unfortunately, if I were to just go from Son to Bruno, it would mean downgrading one of my attackers, who I'm going to be discussing very shortly. So that's what I don't like. I'm not as confident in Ivan Toney, for example, as I am with Iheanacho, Calvert-Lewin, Antonio, even Wilson, and all these other 7.5 and 8 million forwards. So that's kind of my thinking at the moment. But I do like Son. I think he is being underlooked, or overlooked, should I say. And his ownership is very low, considering how highly owned he was last season, nearing 60% most of the time, and just how good he was. And as for Salah, I don't really want to discuss him too much. We already know what he brings, and he's just pretty much the standout captaincy option. And I do think he's going to be the highest scoring player this season, if not second or third, as he always is pretty much. But I just like Salah so much with the fixtures. You can captain him pretty much in in the first 6 game weeks. That's the appeal of him. And having him and Bruno, and then having Trent in defence, and then maybe going for another premium, it just leaves you kind of short in other areas. So I think you have to prioritise. So it might be, the potential of, okay, out of those 3 I said, Trent, Salah and Bruno, who do I leave out potentially? And if you do have all 3, then you're going to have to be prepared to go for a few more punts, kind of unproven assets like Ivan Toney. So that's what I would be saying to you lot. And then Kai Havertz to complete the midfield. I mean, I don't like him too much for the first 6 game weeks as a whole, but for game week 1, he's a great captaincy shout, a great differential, and I think he has some goals and assists in him this season. I think he's going to go to the next level. Under Tuchel, there was a very big improvement in his numbers, and even though they weren't spectacular, you can see the improvement happening, and he had a few double-digit returns towards the end of last season. So Kai Havertz is a good one, and he's going to be quite a popular pick, but not that popular that he's going to be kind of part of the template, I think. A lot of people are going to be going without him, but game week 1 is a great fixture, and I'm not so sure about Crystal Palace under Vieira. It's kind of an unknown entity, and Chelsea could take advantage, so we'll wait and see there. But what I really like about this team is the front 3, having Iheanacho, Antonio and Calvert-Lewin. I really like that. And I don't even have Watkins, for example, who's got great fixtures, and arguably he would be the highest scoring forward around that price bracket. But Iheanacho, I will be honest, I'm very kind of torn, because I think if Iheanacho does start, I think he'll continue where he left off from last season. But I'm not sure if him and Barnes can coexist in the same team, but if they can, both of them are great assets. You could even double up on Leicester attack, but will Iheanacho continue to start all the games? And it's not just the kind of Harvey Barnes dilemma that we have to contend with, also the formation. Will Leicester go with 2 strikers or 1? Will it be Vardy or Iheanacho starting? Who knows? There's kind of a lot of questions in the air, but there's also the fact that Daka has arrived at Leicester City. He's 7.5 million too, so maybe the minutes are going to be shared amongst the forwards. So having looked at all that, there's a lot of question marks around Iheanacho, so maybe it's worth going to Watkins instead and maybe moving Buendia to someone else, because I probably wouldn't want to have triple Aston Villa if I'm being completely honest. But if Iheanacho continues to start, and we're going to have to keep on looking in pre-season, then I think he's a great option and probably one of the highest scoring forwards in the whole game across the whole season if he can maintain those starts. But what I like a lot about this front line, the fact that they're all 7.5 or 8 million, you can move them on to other options like Bamford, for example, or Watkins. So you have a bit of flexibility. There's also Callum Wilson, who's being very, very overlooked at the moment. And then Antonio, he actually scored twice the other day against Celtic. And yeah, Antonio, the fitness issues will always be there, but I just really like Antonio in general. His underlying numbers are always elite pretty much, and of course if you can I wouldn't say fix his finishing, but if he can be a bit more consistent with his finishing, I think he's just a great asset and he'll be even better than he already is. And then we have Calvert-Lewin, of course, the new manager. How will he play under Rafael Benitez? He hasn't actually done so yet in pre-season, so he's a bit of an unknown entity. He's going to be coming back a bit late because of the Euros, despite not playing really, but Calvert-Lewin, I think with the fixtures, the way he started last season, I think it could be really good, and he's around 28% ownership, a bit less than Watkins, but Calvert-Lewin I really like this season, and I think he's actually going to start very well. But once again, there's quite a few questions in the air surrounding Everton at the moment, and James Rodriguez is a bit injury prone, but if he's playing as well, I think the creativity for Calvert-Lewin will be very good, and I think maybe he's going to be scoring even more than he did last season towards the beginning, but we'll wait and see. But yeah, I'll be honest, Antonio's the one I'm most confident in out of the front 3, but if Iheanacho were to start, he'd be a set in my team for sure. And as for my bench, Foster's still there, he's just bench fodder to be honest. Ben White should be nearing a move to Arsenal. Arsenal were one of the best defences last season. They conceded the 3rd least amount of goals. In terms of expected goals conceded, they were 5th. So Arsenal, there's quite a lot to like. I think defensively they're a pretty good team, and Ben White should be nailed. That 50 million price tag, yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be starting from the get-go along with maybe Gabriel. We'll wait and see what happens there. But I do think Ben White could actually offer quite a bit for Arsenal. Is he worth 50 million? Probably not, but we'll wait and see. And 4.5 million in FPL, I think could offer decent value, and maybe he can finally get some attacking returns. Now, this Norwich player, I'm not going to even try pronounce him. Let's call him Andrew. Well, what I like about him is he's 4 million and he should be starting quite a few games, but he is ultimately bench fodder. But if I'm being honest, I do prefer having yet another 4.5 million option in there. But at the moment, I'm not that convinced, with the likes of Eiling, also Lamptey. And then you look at also Fofana. I like him, but is he going to start? We just don't know that yet. And then Brownhill, he's probably one of the best options you can get at around 4.5 million. I don't know why I'm speaking like that, but yeah, 4.5 million. I'm just not so sure about all those options, but out of those lot, I think Brownhill is one of the better ones. He scored in pre-season as well, so obviously a lot of people are going to be getting excited about him, but he was in my team even before that happened, just to let you know. But you probably don't believe me anyway. Now, this is what I'm going to be thinking of in terms of if I could make a bit more money, downgrade Calvert-Lewin in attack to maybe Callum Wilson or Watkins, and then I can upgrade Andrew, the Norwich defender, up to Fofana. So that's what I could do. But there's different ways to go about it. I think maybe Buendia could just go to Rafinha, and despite the tough fixtures Leeds have to start the season, I could just have Rafinha there already, and if necessary, play with 4 at the back at times, and I have 5 options to choose from. But of course, if Fofana is going to be rotated or not even be a starter, then it's not really ideal, to be honest. I don't want to have a 4.5 million defender who's not starting most games. So that's kind of a bit of a tricky one. Callum Wilson actually has an exceptional record against West Ham. He's even scored a hat-trick the first time he's played them in a season, and he's actually scored multiple times. He scored last season in their opener against West Ham. So Callum Wilson actually has a very good record against the Hammers, and yeah, especially when he faces them for the first time in a season. So considering the fact that Newcastle once again play West Ham in the opener, maybe Callum Wilson's going to be a very good option. He's got some good fixtures to start the season. He should be the talisman. And another thing is that Newcastle have everyone back pretty much, so they could actually be carrying on from where they left off, where they were scoring a lot of goals. They were playing with a bit more freedom, and they were expressing themselves more. So maybe Callum Wilson could be one of the best options, who's not really being considered by many. But the rest, as you can see, is pretty much the same. But of course, if I were to have Bruno in my team, it'd be Son to Bruno, and then I'd probably have to downgrade one of my forwards to Ivan Toney, and also probably downgrade someone else across my midfield, attack or defence. So that's why having Bruno and Salah and Trent, and then all of these options across the rest of my team and squad, it's just going to be very difficult to do. And I think Bruno could actually start the season exceptionally well. Of course, he was the highest scoring player last season, and he's just a great option. He got 17 points against some of his opening opponents like Leeds and Southampton, but it's just so hard to fit him in. So it's going to be difficult, and I'm not completely set. And what I would recommend to all of you, I think it's a key bit of advice, is to not make just an absurd number of drafts. Of course, it's very important to consider a number of different possibilities and outcomes, but I wouldn't overdo it, because then you're just going to be overcomplicating things and maybe just not really going with a logical decision in the end, because you're thinking of everything that could happen and every single eventuality. So what I would recommend is have a few ideas of teams you would go for. As I said in my first draft video, maybe kind of highlight 20 to 40 players that you'd go for, but in the end break them down towards the last week or so heading into game week 1. But I wouldn't be making a new draft every single day, because what I've actually found is that after making my first draft and then making a subsequent draft, I'm just thinking too much. I'm overcomplicating things. So I would recommend just making a few, but just don't overdo it. That would be my advice. But yeah, I think there will be quite a few changes yet again before game week 1, especially with new injury news, new signings, and also just new kind of data and information that we accumulate, such as will Iheanacho start? Will Leicester be playing free at the back? And if so, is Fofana part of that squad? There's quite a lot of things to take into account. Also, is Harry Kane going to move to Manchester City? Same with Grealish. How will that impact Buendia and Heung-min Son, and etc.? So many things to consider. So I would just recommend right now, make a draft, maybe make a few alterations here and there, and then start to really finalize it towards the last week or so heading into game week 1. But thank you for watching this video. Remember to send in your teams on Twitter and Instagram in direct messages, and crop the images of your squad, and then I can rate it in the future rate my team video. And also join the league, which was obviously in the description below and also on screen throughout most of this video. But yeah, really appreciate all the support. Remember to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here, and share this video around with anyone who loves FPL. There'll be more content coming along, and if you have any ideas, I'm constantly brainstorming at the moment, then feel free to let me know down in the comment section down below. And yeah, I'll be looking to make those sorts of videos in the near future. And of course, when the season is properly up and running, I'll be doing the usual deadline streams, team selection videos and previews and all this sort of thing. So stay tuned for that. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.